Hello, Sister Friends. Welcome to Sister Friends Cups and Conversation. I'm your host, Teresa Cooper, and I'm glad that you're joining me today. We're going to have a wonderful table. We're going to be talking about marital bliss, the 4 seasons of marriage to bloom. I want you to bloom. This is going to be a good one. Let's go. Welcome to Sister Friends Cups and Conversation. I'm your host, Teresa Cooper, and I'm glad that you're here today. I got my co-host, Catherine.
So glad to have you with us today.
And we have a wonderful table today. I want to introduce you to these ladies. I have right here before me Miss Dawn Collins.
Hello.
And this is her third. You've been to the table quite a few times.
A few times, yes. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And then today, for the very first time, we have author S. Lynn Marshall at the table.
Hello.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's going to be a great conversation and a great episode. Before we start, though, I want to feature our cup. Our featured cup for today says, "It doesn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you."
That's good.
And that is a great principle to live by. It doesn't have to happen to you to matter to you. If more of us would be concerned and have care about all the things that are happening in our neighborhoods, in our country, around the world, especially right now with everything that's going on with Ukraine.
Yes.
They've kind of gone down in the news ratings, but it's still happening.
That's right.
And so it doesn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you. And so find something that you can pour yourself into so that you can make the world a better place.
That's good.
All right, we're going to have a good conversation here. And before we start, we're going to be talking about marital bliss, the 4 seasons of marriage. But before we get to that, I want our guest today, Miss S. Lynn Marshall. She has a new book out, and it's entitled I Double Dog Dare You. Okay, to bloom. You talk about a dare. When you double dog dare, that's for sure. That's street. Come on. I dare you to bloom. And I want her to just take a few minutes and just tell us a little bit about this book.
Yeah, so I Double Dog Dare You to Bloom is about my life.
Okay.
From childhood to pretty much present day, and just all the things that I went through and how I was able to overcome.
Yes.
And just who I am today. The greatest thing I love about it, though, is that it is a challenge to the reader to bloom, and so I talk about that in the book. But there are many areas that a person can bloom in, and so I talk about that, and I love it. I love what's come of it. So.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading this, and I'm looking forward to us even coming back with more conversations about it. I know she's got a great T-shirt, and also underneath her name, it'll have all of her information so that you can get this book and even the T-shirt, because we're all created to bloom.
Yes. Yes.
We're not called to wither on the vine.
That's
Not at
right.
all.
But we're called to bloom.
Right.
And so I'm excited to read this.
Me too.
Today we're going to talk about blooming in our marriages and marital bliss. That's what we're going to talk about. And this information that we're going to be sharing today in this conversation, you can, be a part of it even if you're not married. Or maybe you could be a widow, or you could have been experiencing a divorce. If at any time that you expect to be married again or have a healthy relationship, you're going to want to hear this information. I think at the table, how many years of marriage do we have at the table? I mean, I'm like at 36. I stopped counting. How about you, Don?
25.
25?
30.
30?
It'll be 16 in November.
Oh, 16. So as you can see, this is a loaded marital table. That's like 100 years of marriage advice, marriage wisdom, marriage isms, just marriage. Okay, and today we're going to talk about the 4 seasons of marriage and having marital bliss and blooming in our marriages.
Yes.
And so I'm going to give you guys the 4 seasons, and then I'm going to let these ladies loose because, I mean, as you can see, I mean, I got note cards because, you know, I'm past 50 and I need to remember. But when we talk about marriage, shoot, you can throw out all the cards, the books. You've been married this long. I mean, you can help somebody.
Yes.
Help somebody.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to try to do that today. So the 4 seasons are spring, summer, fall, and winter. Okay? And the goal of this table is to not just talk to you about marriage, but the goal is, ladies, is to be happily married.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that's the goal?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So let me just throw this on the fly. How many years have you been happily married, Miss Lynn?
Oh, wow. I would probably say 7 to 10.
Okay. How about you, Kathy?
About 12 years.
Okay.
My God. We went
On
straight
the
for
spot,
the
huh? Because, you know, people, you know, we can't just make it sound like
You're
it's
right.
all just blissful and wonderful.
Yes,
I mean, we've all experienced
Yes.
different seasons.
Yes.
And, you know, and so in some of those seasons when things start happening to us, we're not happy about it.
That
You know
is
what I mean?
so true.
Now, we can still be in love. We can
Right,
still be
right.
committed, but we don't have to be happy.
Right.
right.
You know, so
That's the truth. That's the
That's
truth.
absolute truth.
So you haven't figured yours out yet?
I would say about 15.
Okay.
I would say about 15. Real, true happiness.
Yeah, yeah.
About 15.
Okay.
It was just because, you know, we married young.
Yeah.
We
I
married,
did too.
Oh, yeah, you did. We married young. We were 20 when we
Okay.
got married. And we really didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, I don't think did any of us know what we were doing. Like when you said I do, were you like fully convinced when you said I do, or did you have that little bit in the back of your mind like, "Ooh, I cross my fingers. I hope to die. Please let this work." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely, I did.
I mean, like you meant it. You were
Yes.
doing it on purpose,
Right.
but somewhere in the recesses of your mind, you were just like, "Oh Lord, can't we just make it?"
I
You
had
know
a
what I
plan
mean?
B. I had a plan B.
You did?
I did.
Now, I didn't have a plan B.
Oh, I had, yes.
But okay.
It was just trauma from before I
Yeah.
even married him. A relationship I was in before I married him was abusive.
Okay.
And we weren't getting married or anything, but it was very abusive. And so I didn't even really want to marry him.
Oh.
And he convinced me that he loved me.
Yes.
And I
Yes,
was like,
Terrell.
okay. Right.
Smooth-
Yes,
smooth voice,
Terrell
Terrell.
L. Collins. And he does have a sexy voice. She said smooth, I'll say sexy.
I
He's
said
mine.
smooth. I don't know.
She said smooth. I'm saying sexy. But yeah. And he convinced me that he loved me and, you know, 3 things that I search for, and I was thinking about it ever since we talked about this topic. It is I want to be respected, I want to be preferred, and I want to be supported. And I didn't always feel that
Yeah.
throughout the marriage, so that's why I wasn't always happy.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, Dawn.
You're welcome.
Wow. Okay. So we said the 4 seasons were spring. Spring is where most marriages begin. Most of us all begin in spring, where marriage begins in the springtime, where everything's just lovely. Okay. And then summer, which somebody might call that the honeymoon stage. Spring is, you know, and then summer is an enjoyable season of marriage. It is characterized by feelings of happiness, satisfaction, accomplishment, and connection. Can summer last forever? I think so. But I mean, I think so in the sense that it just keeps coming back around and it keeps coming around.
Yeah.
Not that it's a sustained summer.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
That's not reality.
right.
Yes.
It's someone's, but I don't know whose.
Yes.
The
Yes.
show,
right,
the TV
you know.
shows, the movies.
Okay. And then fall is characterized as neglect. It's what leads couples into the fall season of marriage. So feeling neglect, and that kind of makes sense where things are falling off the vine, or you've not pruned and did the work around
Yes.
that which you want the outcome.
Right.
Yes.
You're expecting this beautiful outcome, but
Right.
you didn't do the work.
Right.
That's right.
So you find your marriage in that season of fall. And then winter. Winter is dark moments in marriage
Yes.
where it can be cold and it can be dry. And have either one of you guys experienced a cold dry winter.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
After
Yeah.
being married 30 years, I think you go through all seasons.
Yeah.
I think we stayed in winter too long because we were both too stubborn.
Yeah.
We were both older children, the oldest of the, different parentage. And we just both, it was just a constant battle.
Okay.
And raising children differently. And then coming in with, with kids and being married before and all of that. I think for a marriage to be successful, you have to get around people who care for you and help you put in the work
Okay.
to make it better.
Okay.
And we've been coming to this church in October. It will be 22 years.
Oh, okay.
And so when we got here, our plan was to let our kids graduate and we was going to divorce court. And then we called Bishop too many nights. Or called him and let him, talk to us and then showcase marriage, and people who really cared and people who had been married talking to us and, different people pouring into our lives. And now we do marriage counseling. And, and the thing about it is, I always tell people, just because your marriage is beautiful, don't stop coming to marriage counseling.
Right.
You stay in marriage counseling around good married people, the continuation of your marriage, because it helps keep it healthy.
Right, because that's really the pattern, is that people only seek out help when they need it.
That's
But
right.
really, your marriage needs to always be having deposits,
Yes.
always having nurturing, always having information, tools to help strengthen it so that you can make it to the next season. And I love that about God, because even in the natural, he didn't just make the earth just one perpetual fall.
That's
but
right.
He broke it up, and he gave us, seasons, and he gave us the principles of something to look forward to.
That's right.
And then for change.
Yeah.
That's right.
But a lot of times in marriages, we look for things not to change, and for comfortability,
Yes.
and for sameness. And really healthy marriages you should be able to look at it over the years, whether it's two years, 6 years. You should be able to see how you guys grew and how you've changed, and how you've changed individually, and how you've changed collectively.
That's right.
And so if you've just tuned in, we're talking about the 4 seasons of marriage, marital bliss, and can you bloom in all 4 of those seasons. And today we have with us S. Lynn Marshall, and she's wrote a book about blooming. And so I want her to just take a few minutes and just talk to us a little bit about blooming, and how, where you see blooming, and how it can fit through these 4 seasons in marriage.
Yes, so with blooming, basically it means to yield flowers or crops.
Yeah.
So you don't just see leaves, you see the flower, you see the vegetable or the fruit that you want to pick.
Yeah.
So with marriage, I just think with blooming, it's all about new. You were talking about most people want things to stay the same.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to try something new, do
Yes.
something new.
Yes.
You have to be willing to grow, and that's a part of blooming. And so,
Yes.
I mean, that's reading books, or like you said, getting around people
Yes.
to help you,
Yes.
and just exposing yourself. There was a pastor I was under that said exposure brings expansion. So, if you're doing those things, you're going to bloom in your marriage. And I want to talk about growth for a little bit.
Yes,
When
please.
we plant things in the natural, we think we're just going to immediately go from seed to harvest
Yes.
quickly, and that we won't have any trouble in between.
Yeah.
But really, when you're growing crops, you have to look for diseases and insects and things,
Yes.
and be prepared to handle, solve problems, basically.
Good.
So with blooming in marriage, it's the same way. It's not going to be a straight line
Yeah.
to
Yes.
blooming. You're going to have to endure some things and make the choice to stay together, until you see that harvest.
Yeah,
So,
good.
I love that part where you said make a choice
That's right.
to stay together. Because at the beginning, the question was, how many years do we have at this table? And you said, Dawn, you said 25,
Yes,
Kathy,
ma'am.
you said 30, and Miss Lynn, you said 16. And I said 36. So we've all made individual choices to stay, and to expect a different season. It didn't matter what season we were in, but when we decided to stay, part of the staying was there was a better day coming, and I
Yes.
still had faith for and hope
Yes.
for this relationship, and for what God has said to us as a couple, and then what God has said to you individually, because that's really important.
It is.
You know, my daughter is, I want to say, 35. But she's, always my daughter, so I don't really think of her as in those terms like 35, 12, 6,
Right.
She reminds me I'm grown, fully adulting with 2 children. But it's interesting because one of the things that I always tell her is, and this is so important when we talk about blooming, is don't forget yourself.
Yes.
Because sometimes in marriage we can
right.
we can think so much as a team, and it is a team, but we can get so molded into the team and so molded into, and the two became one, that we forget that we're yet still individuals, and that two becoming one is a spiritual aspect.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you never lose yourself, even though things around you try to make you lose yourself. How did that work for y'all?
The thing about it is, I like when you said that, because sometimes people think, I'm getting married, I have this dream wedding, and my knight in shining armor is going to take me away. And then when you said also about, you do these things, we were doing all the things, doing the baseball, the basketball, family vacations. Every year we was doing something, taking our kids. And then when those kids get older, you like, what about us?
Yeah.
We didn't hang out separately so much with girlfriends. We talk on the phone. If they come in town, we talk. And the same thing with him with guy friends. We were so much together all the time that we didn't make allowances for us to just be and have that time alone. And then it would cause chaos. But then you think in your mind, I'm always supposed to have my family with me. I'm always supposed to do this. And then you could forget about yourself and you could come bitter. You'd be like, I didn't sign up for this just to be a 24-hour mom, do this. We did, but it is a way that we could do everything and it still be profitable for us as well.
Absolutely. So it goes back to that question. And let me ask you this, Miss Lynn. Can you bloom in every season?
Yes. In the natural, you can grow year-round, even if it's in a greenhouse.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
that's good.
I think you can bloom in every season. Again, it's about choosing.
So it would be very intentional. So just because you're in a winter, and that is your reality, a winter of your marriage, you could be and they type the winter as a dark time. Maybe you guys are just constantly fighting, or maybe it's an empty nest situation, or maybe it's a sickness, or maybe it's a lack of intimacy, and so that would be considered like a winter. But even in winter, things can live, things can bloom, but it takes a little bit more work. It takes the tools that you use in winter versus in spring or summer or in fall for the foliage and the things that are around you look quite different. And you're dealing with a different atmosphere, right? But life can still grow. Can you speak to that and how it's applied to your life, Miss Lynn?
Yes. So for me, my husband and I actually have just kind of bloomed together.
Okay, yeah.
He kind of let out in blooming, just really.
He bloomed first.
He bloomed first, yeah. So I always like to compare things to the natural. That's the same way in someone's garden. You're going to have flowers that bloom before other flowers or crops that are ready to eat before others. So, but for us, I was kind of jealous about it because I felt like he was leaving me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we had a conversation about it, and later, not during while it was happening. But he apologized. He said he saw where he could have been leaving me in a sense of growing and books he was reading and all of that. So, but I would say now we're more so blooming together, but it's still that individuality that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So God has him doing some things and I'm doing some things, but we're both blooming for the glory of God.
Yeah,
So.
that's good.
That's great. I would say, and then I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw it to you, Miss Dawn. I don't have a green thumb. Okay. And so I do have live plants, though, in my home. but I only have the kind of plant that it can die, it can be neglected, it can be not paid attention to, but it still stays alive. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to
Yeah.
This particular plant, it came all the way from California to here with me. So
wow.
I've had it for 30 years. I've had it maybe longer than that because I've had it it's the same plant. My kids know this plant. It traveled with us, so I've had this plant. I've broken it off, gave my daughter some of this plant. And I don't have a green thumb, but I was smart enough to pick the right kind of plant that no matter what I did to it, it was going to live. And so let me just say this. That's the kind of man I got.
I knew where you were going.
Oh, my gosh. I can't kill him. Nothing I do. He's a strong man. He was made especially for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So go, Don.
I don't know what I can follow up with that, but I will say it's a question. Do you think the reason why there's so many divorces and why so many people don't choose to stay is because we've lost that, I don't know if it was because we weren't taught or we didn't see it emulated, the choice to stay. We've lost that, I think people get married and not only think that there's a shining armor waiting for them, a knight in shining armor, but they also believe it's going to be nothing but peace. And when it's not, it's like, it's time to go because you don't really respect my choices. You're not listening to me and things of that nature. But I feel like what we're saying here today is that's all part of marriage.
Right. Yes. It's a part of it.
Yes.
And we're not talking about accepting abuse or we're not talking about accepting someone that's trying to change you. When you get married, when you walk down that aisle, you're fully accepting that person for who they are, not for who you hope for them to be.
Yes.
It doesn't work when you just have aspirations. You have to truly buy into, no, I love you today. The person that you are today is who I'm committing to.
Yeah.
So none of us are really ever, if we're honest with ourselves, we're not surprised about who we married.
Well,
if you really saw them for who they are.
That's true. That is so true.
Now, some people they're surprised because they were in fantasy world.
That's right.
They weren't really accepting that person for who they are. Because people can only be who they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be honest, people are at their best behavior when they're dating.
Right.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And I think people, we don't teach anymore the sanctity of marriage.
Yes.
Or couples, before they get married, they don't get counseling.
Right, they don't.
Which you need to get marriage counseling. And I'm not talking about one day with the pastor. I'm talking about here, we do it from 6 months to a year.
Okay, yes.
And then we put emphasis on this is a covenant marriage. And that we believe in marriage for a lifetime. And we
Yes.
put emphasis on, now we're not talking about abuse, we're not talking about anything, any of that.
Right.
But what God intended for marriage. We let them know the good, the bad,
Right.
the ugly, and it don't mean pack my bags and run back to mama and daddy.
Right.
It means you stand, you stick it out, you work it out, and you get with people who you're going to get help from.
Right.
But I think the generation that's coming up, and I'm not saying for all this young generation, but soon as they don't like something, they just like, I'm out.
Right. They have a contingency plan already in place versus having principles in place that say these principles will work if you apply them.
Yes.
And I kind of go back to what you were saying about going to counseling.
Yes.
Would you find that a lot of that more couples would go to counseling if both of them, believed in counseling? Because I find that a lot of times people don't go because one of the partners, whether it's the husband or the wife, is like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want nobody in my business. And I think that kind of, it's like you want to have a garden, but you don't want a gardener, or you don't want to go and read the directions on the little what's on the back of the seed package that tells you what to do and how to plant it and all. But you still want this garden.
Yeah.
You have to do the work. You know what I mean? You have to inform yourself, and part of that information when you're talking about relationships and marriage is that you do have to go to get counseling.
And when you see the glitches or the red flags, you go call someone then.
Right.
You don't wait for you to get all these glitches to where you can't function. Or we've had people, they were just completely broken. We get in front of them, it's over. And then we have to work with them for months to get them back in love, get them back to honor and respecting each other. Okay, but most of the time, to be honest with it, men don't like to go to counseling.
Right.
It's always the woman giving them an ultimatum. Either you go as I'm out, and then they'll come and then they'll sit up and they don't want to be there and all this. But then after a while, they see, this life and, if we could be honest with one another, then they will continue to come. But most couples, they do not. And I would say men, because women usually want to fix it.
Right,
it's very rare that you see a woman like, I'm done with this. Even if it's infidelity, she would try to press through. It's very seldom you see women that don't want to counsel.
We were going to get a divorce by the time we moved here. We're prior military, Air Force, and we came here. We didn't know nothing about Shreveport. The only thing we knew about Louisiana was New Orleans. Okay. New Orleans or Baton Rouge. And we were going to get a divorce when we got here. It was rough because of the red flags and the things that piled up. We did not address them earlier on. And we actually were a couple that had one-day counseling session before we got married. So I say that to say that marriage is salvageable.
Yeah.
You can restore it. It's possible, but you have to make the choice. And you have to put in the work. And no matter how many red flags you have piled up, just know that you can get the help. There is hope out there. I think that we connected over, I don't know, this is like a buzzword, but over trauma. Because of the way we grew up. I was looking for someone to really love me and cherish me, and because of the things that I went through, it's like, that's what I was looking for, and stability. And he was all of that at a very young age. It was weird for him to be that responsible at a very young age, but that's what I was looking for. And so we got together, and he saw a good mother in me, a good wife. And that's one thing I will say, a man knows when a woman's going to be a good wife.
Come on.
I would tell you that.
Yes.
They know early on.
Yes.
And so he saw all of that and was like, yeah, I can make a family with her. But that's pretty much all we did, and that's just not going to be enough.
And that's a whole conversation on what's a good wife. Because you say that today, and people are like, what? So that's a whole other conversation. But what I will say though is that men do know right away if they are wanting to make a commitment.
That's right.
And so that's important for women to really digest that and not live in a false reality that says he needs 5 years, 10 years, 2 years to figure out if you're the one. Generally, most men know within 6 months.
That's right.
If he's going to make that type of commitment. And my advice, asked or unasked, solicited or unsolicited, has always been to the young women that have been in my life. He's got a year. And then maybe 6 months. So that's a year and a half. That's to propose.
That's good.
Prepare for marriage and say I do. After that, he don't get no more time.
That's right.
Because you got to move on.
Wasting yours.
You have to, And so but when you have that type of commitment for yourself, then that's what you're going to attract.
That's right.
And guys that kind of know but have cold feet, because sometimes guys can be a little bit more intimidated than women, and that's because a lot of times women are raised different than how parents raise their sons.
Right.
And so women go into relationships already saying, I need him to be at least 3 years older than me, or even 5 years. They're looking, you know what I mean? Because, you grow up thinking or being told that, or maybe just genetically, that women are more mature. And I think it could be contributed to our blooming, our becoming a woman at an early age. So we take on more responsibilities.
That's right.
And so women can tend to attract older guys, and so you have that dynamic, and I was going somewhere with it.
Hey, my husband's younger than me.
My husband younger than me too.
Well, you
Your
little
husband
cougars.
younger than you too?
You little cougars.
But you know what? I didn't know that my husband was younger than me because
I
he
didn't either.
acted so much
Exactly.
older.
Okay.
And so by the time he told me his age, I was like, what?
Right.
And he was like, I'm such a, because I was 28, he was 26. And I was like, oh, well, I'm too far in, not to back out.
Right.
And then he always did act older than me.
And that's what it was. They act older.
They tricked you.
Yes, they tricked me.
I see.
Yeah.
Proverbs 20:5 says, the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out. So, the purposes, the passions, the visions and the ideas of a man's heart are deep waters. But it's the wise. It's those that are understanding, that know how to draw out those deep waters out of people. And so, and marriage is really that way. It's really learning each other,
Yes.
and giving each other the grace and the permission to grow individually, and then to grow collectively together.
Yes.
in our life's mission together. And why did we come together? What were we wanting to accomplish
That's right.
together as a marriage and as a couple? And so what happens is that you apply those principles in your relationships, so that at each stage, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, that there's growth happening, and that
right.
there's cultivation happening. And
Yes.
so even the bad stuff, God knows how to make it good.
That's
Yes,
right.
it does. I'm
You
a
know?
witness.
That's right. You got to allow him to do it, though.
Yes.
You just can't give up. You got to have some grit, put your heels in, and press forward.
Yeah, because we said 100 years at this table, but it's so important for you all you're looking at us, and it's not all fairy tales and Wonderland. We heard Dawn say that she was on the verge of divorce.
Yes, ma'am.
We've heard Kathy say she was on the verge of divorce. I mean, we was 7 years into the marriage, and I was like, I'm done with this preacher pastor stuff. I want a divorce. So, and Miss Lynn, you've had rough patches, but you guys have made a choice.
That's right, a choice.
To continue to remember what it was about each other, about why you got married.
Yeah.
Because there was something good, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes.
That caused you to say, I do. And so I love this. God teaches us how our faith can be applied in every area of our lives. So we have to have faith for our marriage.
Yes.
That's right.
And the same way that we can believe God to heal our backs, to heal, our feet, or to just heal broken places in our physical body.
That's right.
We can believe God to heal our marriages.
That's right.
And we can ask God to heal our sex life.
Yes.
And God heal our do we really pray, you know what I mean, and ask of the Holy Spirit to enter into those areas.
Yes,
And sometimes we don't think on those terms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as soon as we can figure that out and realize that He wants to make Himself known in all of those areas in our lives, then we can find that supernaturally He causes things to bloom. We went through the whole empty nester stage. And my God, it was winter. And actually before the winter of the empty nester, it was kind of like menopause. We went on a 911 menopause phase, fast track. And that was really traumatic because, I was cold, he was hot. I was hot, he was cold. And in the natural and in the spirit, it was just, the wires were all, crisscrossed. But we had to keep the faith.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And we had to speak those things that were not as though they would be. And so we were able to get past that winter to go back into a summer, or to go back into the spring or the fall, and really enjoy all of those moments. Are you guys enjoying the ride right now?
I enjoy the ride, and I also tell them all the time, we have lost time, but God is a redeemer.
Yes.
He will redeem the
Absolutely.
time, and we enjoy each other so much now, and we appreciate each other
Yes.
Absolutely. I tell There's only one way out of this marriage,
Okay. At this point,
and it's death.
yes.
I'll do 25 to 50.
No, you won't. You won't get caught.
So, it's for a lifetime. Because marriage is not, eternal. It's just for a lifetime.
That's right.
And so because it's for a lifetime, we fight to have all those 4 seasons and just squeeze all the life out of it so that we can have everything that God has prepared for us. Well, thank you, ladies, for this conversation. This was a great time around the table. I want to remind you again about Miss Lynn Marshall. I double dog dare you to bloom. Bloom in your marriage. Bloom individually. Bloom. Thank you, and don't forget, Something to Sip On is next. Thank you for joining me today. What a wonderful conversation we had at the Sister Friends table. We talked about marriage, the 4 seasons of marriage, and blooming in whatever stage that you're in. Sister Friends, we had 100 years of marriage at this table. I'm so grateful that we were able to have this conversation. I want you to join us again next week at 12 noon and also at 5:30 p.m. Follow us across all of our media platforms and continue to join the conversation. Don't forget, Something to Sip On is next. Hello, this is Something to Sip On. Today, this was a great episode. Talking about marriage and talking about blooming in all 4 seasons of your marriage. We're cheering for you. We have hope for you. I promise you, your situation is not unique. You're not isolated in your situation. Someone else has been through what you've been through. You just got to seek out the wisdom and the knowledge that they can have to help get you through to your next fruitful season, your next blooming season. And marriage is beautiful, but you got to stick it out. It's got some thorns. It's got all the stuff around, that you got to, cultivate, and you got to prune, and sometimes you got to use manure to get something beautiful. But we're rooting for you, and we're living proof that you can have a successful marriage, a happy marriage. That's the goal, not just to be married, but to be happily married. Dawn, what are you sipping on this week?
Well, I'm sipping on, you see my shirt here, it says Perfectly Imperfect. One of the things that I believe God gave me earlier this year concerning my marriage and just life, period, is not perfect, but forgiven. And that just carries on in everything that I'm doing throughout this year. And I leave that with you. No one is perfect, but we are all forgiven.
All right, Miss Kathy.
Well, I would say winter don't last always.
Yes.
For those who are in their winter season, I have this quote that says, "A great marriage requires great effort from 2." If you want it to work, it's going to take both of you to do it. And it can be done. Don't be afraid of the hard work. Don't be afraid of your winter season or your fall season, because spring and summer will come.
All right. Now, Miss S. Lynn Marshall is our guest today at the table, and she's going to leave you with some wisdom.
Yes, so in my book, I have a statement, and it says, "Wisdom is the original life coach, and it's still in business." That's all you need to bloom is wisdom. If you're willing to submit to wisdom, the Spirit of God, you will bloom. So I'm leaving you with that.